Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I'm your host, Teri Wellbrock. And today's guest, we met, it was probably over a year ago, taking a walk on Hilton Head Island. A mutual friend introduced us, and now everything has aligned. The stars have aligned, and she's joining me here today. So this is Babs Walters, and she is author and motivational speaker, recently released Facing the Jaguar, a memoir of courage and confrontation. So welcome, Babs.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Teri.
Oh, 100%. I told you I'm excited to learn one about, well, your journey and this book and how it came into fruition. But yeah, we were just talking about how the energy we put out into the universe starts to come back to us and things start to come into fruition for us. And so I'm excited that that's happening for you. So let's talk about the book. What do you want to share your own personal story of triumph and how you came to write and publish this book?
Okay, sure. Well, my story, like just about everybody else's, started 2 generations before me. So I have 3 grandparents who came here from Europe at the early 1900s. And one of them was sent here because his father, an English seaman, had impregnated an Irish maiden. And obviously nobody wanted him. So he was sent into foster care. Until he was about 15, his father, this almost sounds like a joke, an English seaman, because all he did was contribute to the pregnancy and then keeping him in foster care. And then at 15, the people that he was being taken care of by threw him out into the street at 15 because no more money was coming. So he became a very street person. We might get into that a little bit more later, but he was a tough guy. My other 2 grandparents came from Czechoslovakia and Hungary. One of them was very wealthy and came here to continue his fortune. And my grandmother was one of 13 children who was rented out to a farm near her because her parents couldn't afford to keep 13 children. And one of her sisters was supposed to come, an older sister, but she got sick. So my grandmother came by mistake. And so we have this Czechoslovakian and Hungarian who were very poorly matched. And my grandfather, who was thrown out into the street, ends up marrying my spinster grandmother, who was actually born here in America. And for whatever reason, was very refined and very demure. So we have 2 couples that are completely clashing. And early in the 1900s, they both get divorced, which was uncommon at that time.
Yeah.
You have 2 mothers. We didn't have joint custody in divorced families in those days. So we have 2 mothers dealing with teenagers who were acting out. My father built a bomb in chem lab and was suspended from school and decided that he was smarter than all of the teachers, and he never went back, and he was a truancy problem. And my mother was found making out under the stairwell in her apartment building. This is not my words. Obviously, it was a person of color, but they said to a brown boy. So these 2 mothers have these 2 kids and don't know what to do with them. And they applied to the Jewish Governance Board and got them sent to a reformatory. They were considered juvenile delinquents because the parents couldn't handle them. And even though there were 2 separate campuses on this in this particular school, somehow they became pregnant. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And they couldn't get married in New York without parental permission. So they ran off to Baltimore, got married. Nope, that was the plan. I came too quickly.
Oh,
They couldn't get married until afterwards. So you're beginning to see the picture. These are troubled kids. They are suddenly a baby, and my father gets drafted. It's World War II. So here's my mother alone, a child, taking care of a child, obviously a problem child. My father, with his anger management issues, is very happy shooting guns and being trained as a sniper. He comes back after his service and finds my mother in a room with another man.
Oh,
So their two issues just continued through life. They never got any resolution there. And the childhood that I and my sister and brother were raised in was like a war zone. You never knew when you put your foot down what landmine you were going to hit. So every type of abuse that you could imagine happened to us. And when I was 11, I was reading an encyclopedia and I found a definition of something that my father was doing to me. And it was a definition of incest. And it said it was sexual relations between two people too closely related by blood to be married. But it never spoke about the pain, the fear, the threats that he was going to kill me. And I made a decision that day, Teri. And that decision was that I never felt more alone in my life. And someday I was going to write a book and I was going to be there for some other little girl. Well, it took me about 7 decades. So I don't know that I'm there for little girls anymore, but I learned quite a bit through my own healing process. And I went from surviving to healing. And this time in my life, and I know you'll understand this time is service. I want to shine light in some dark places. This is a messy subject and people just don't want to hear about it. So that's really what my book is about. It's about confronting the people who hurt me and me confronting what it's like to have parents that are just, we're not going to be there.
yeah. Wow. So, so powerful. And one, I applaud your courage for putting your truth out there because I know when originally started to put my truths out there, which I had sexual abuse, but mine wasn't at the hands of my father, but outside predators. Um, but yeah, putting my truth out there were a few people that were put off by it, but what I found was how many people sent me a private message or texted me or said, "Hey, can we meet up and talk?" and started to say, "Oh my gosh, me too," or
Mm.
"Thank you for sharing your truth." And so yeah, it's such, I mean, the numbers are still disgustingly alarming. What is it? One out
And
of
poorly reported too, because
exactly,
most people don't. Yeah.
right, when they say 1 out of 4 girls, 1 out of 7 boys, and that's just what's reported. So, and I think, who are these people that are doing this to children? I don't understand. It just baffles me. So again, I just applaud you for shining that light because it certainly needs to be shown. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. But part of my healing, aside from 40 years in therapy and being a self-help junkie, signing up for every seminar and reading every book, um, I read something a couple of years ago that really made a significant impact on my ability to tell the story. And it was a book written by Lindsay Gibson, Dr. Lindsay Gibson. And the book is called Adult Children of Immature Parents. And I had never really considered my parents as immature, but clearly, just chronologically, they were. But I always kind of like was angry at them, angry at my mother for sacrificing us and my father for not being able to know better. But through this reading, one of the things that I understood is that something happened to them. And that is why they were the way they were. So I began my journey in investigating their backstory. That's why I started with my grandparents. So I learned things that if you and I just met somebody and we had heard what my mother or my father had gone through, we would feel a lot of compassion and empathy for them. And we would have a lot of understanding about who they were. I don't know that they could have done any better. I think that what I learned about my mother is that she had to survive. And this is how she survived. She survived by staying with him, even though she was helpless to what he was doing.
Yeah. very, very powerful. And my sister and I have had the same conversation with our parents now that we've both done our healing work, also through therapy and again, like you, if it comes across my radar, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to give that a whirl. I'll try it. Yeah, just to see if it resonates, if it works. But yeah, I'll never forget sitting down with my mom in her 80s and having incredibly beautiful and empowering conversations about her childhood trauma and me, just both of us sitting there and crying together because it helped
Oh,
me just to have this compassion for her that not that it excused behaviors, but that I understood why she kept diving into that bottle of vodka to try to deal with those ghosts that were haunting her that she had never, I mean, she started to confess things that she had never told anyone that had happened to her as a
wow.
child. And which is why I say, even if people, if you're listening in your 80s or 90s, whatever your age is, it is never too late to do the healing work because my mom was sober for 2.5 years in the end,
Mm,
because she finally decided it was time to do that healing work. Yeah.
wow. That had to be very hard for her too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and again,
You
I
must have had an influence on her, Teri.
thanks. I think so. I think so because she would tell me, and on her deathbed, she told me, it's time to put my book out. And because I had told her, oh, mom, I'm doing this memoir and it's going to be our ugly truths. Like, it's going to paint you in an ugly light until I get to the end and we talk about this part of our journey. And she kept saying, no, people need to know. People need to know that truth and to be able to, one, know they're not alone. I mean, that's one of the beauty of your book is, like you said, another little girl to read it or, a teenager and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
Well, I think today children are more aware because they're taught in school you shouldn't let anybody touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. Um, I my sex education in the 50s was watching a black and white video of the birds and the bees pollinating flowers while people were snickering behind me, um, we didn't know what people know now. But I think that what's important in our stories, Teri, is that you don't have to have the same exact story. The important thing is, and that's why I started the group, the Family Secret Keepers, because there are secrets that are very hurtful and painful for people to keep over a lifetime. And I agree with you. It doesn't matter how old you are or how long you've kept that secret. It wasn't yours in the first place. You were burdened by it. And this is a perfect time, as we're proving. I mean, I'm old enough to be your mother, but I just feel like we're ageless. It's not about our age. It's about this. As a Jewish person, I was taught years ago that it's our responsibility to repair the world. And when I wake up in the morning and I look at the world, I have to actually let go of what I'm seeing happening because otherwise I would be immobilized. So there are lots of places where I would like to repair, but I'm doing my corner of the world. And my corner of the world is dealing with keeping this family secret for so long and helping other people realize the benefit if they're ready to share theirs.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So this group that you talk about, is it in person? Is it online? Can you expand on this?
Sure. I do a lot of public speaking, so I work with people in groups as well. Either not everybody's ready to tell the whole story, or even to speak with a witness. So we do journal writing, healing journal writing. We do oral histories, and people record in their own phone. We on my website, I have Secrets No More postcards so people can post anonymously. It's like a God card, it's like We don't put your name with it if that's the first time that you get to tell, or the only way that you can tell. So there are different levels. But also on my website, I do something that I think is really helpful, and I printed one out in case you wanted to talk about it.
Yes.
How to tell if you're ready to tell. Because just because you and I are at this stage where we can tell, I was not here before in my life. I had to get here. I remember once I joined, I don't know if you ever heard of NYU. It's a really top college in Manhattan.
Yeah.
I joined a novel writing course in my 40s. Um, and you had to submit 3 chapters in an outline of the book, and I got accepted. And the professor said to me one day, he said, "No one's going to read your book. Even War and Peace has some peace in it. Go home and heal." So, it's timing is such a critical thing, as we know, a critical element in every decision that we make. And being ready is not the same for each person. So I
100%.
think it's important to know if you're ready to tell.
Yeah, that's such a valid point because I was in my 40s when I finally put my truths out there. And I mean, some of it was known, but like the bank robberies I was involved in, but the sexual abuse, oh my gosh, I had kept that very, very hidden. And so, yeah, and it wasn't until, you're right, until I finally hit a wall after 25 years of panic attacks and said, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like
Wow.
this. And finally ended up in front of a therapist who guided me into EMDR therapy, which was my journey
Right.
into yeah,
Healing.
opening that dark box that box that I had shoved into the back of a dark closet and finally dumping all those contents out. So yeah, very. So how do you is it a prompt that you used with people to help them understand if they're ready, or is it how do you determine that?
I put a checklist together. There are 3 different stages. There's the beginning, there's the middle, and yes, I'm ready. Um, I acknowledge you for getting ready a lot faster than I did, Terry. You're on the fast track. I'm on the cusp of 80. I'm going to be 80 this year, but I'm proud of the fact that I honored my own timeline.
Yeah,
And that's what I think is important with you and I, because we are shining lights for other people, but people have to make their own decision too about whether they're ready or not. So, for example, I did a lot of research, and I found a study that said that the more we think about our secrets, the heavier they become. So that keeping it inside, even if you're not thinking about it every day, but you're triggered by things like you said, you knew you had to get out of that dark box and open it up. Um, when we open up with secrets that are weighing on us, it's actually an unburdening. Now, is everybody walking around thinking that their secret is burdening them? No. There are plenty of people that are in denial. My sister has threatened to sue me when the book comes out.
wow,
And we've had the same experience, or as similar experiences 2 girls being raised in the same house could have. And I think what I value in my work is I'm not the expert. I'm just somebody who's already been through it, and I can show you how I did it, and I can shine light for you to do yours. But I can't tell you how to do this. And so, like, the first thing I say is it too painful for you to keep this secret anymore? You know, when you're feeling the pain. Uh, is it essential for your well-being to set a record straight? My parents, um, they lived in La La Land, and my sister at one point wrote a letter to all of our aunts and uncles, telling them these are not the wonderful people you think they are. And my aunts and uncles stopped talking to us. So not everybody wants to hear the message. It's up to us to decide whether we're ready to tell.
yes. Yeah. I remember me putting, oh, I don't know if it was a video or something of my mom. Yes, it was. She had driven drunk, and I showed up at her place, and it was her. She had hit a wall in her little retirement village, and I was trying to prevent her from, because she was trying to drive again and back out and run away from me. And I was blocking her. And so I had
Oh,
my
wow.
camera out and I recorded it. And then I posted it and I said, this is what I want people to understand about addiction and alcoholism and what I grew up with is that. And so I wrote this very long, I'm a writer. And so I wrote it being about this isn't to shame my mom, but it's to help people understand that this is the journey. This is what, yes, she is this sweet. Now, I grew up very Catholic. And so my mom was always, praying the rosary and going to daily mass. And like she was very religious. And so this little sweet soul, when she was sober, turned into this horrible monster when she would drink. And so most people were very, very compassionate in their responses, but I had those select few family members who private messaged me and just told me I was just a total piece of dog poop for, ever, ever, ever putting this sweet little old lady out there in her truth. And again, my mom and I eventually, my mom joined me on the podcast several times. She started to talk about it as she did her healing work and realized that that's what we need to do. Like we need to start talking about it and share this.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of courage to stand naked in front of the world and be that vulnerable. Brene Brown says, your secret is not for everybody. Somebody needs to deserve the right to hear it. So, unfortunately, when we put it out publicly, like you do and like I do, there are going to be people that are going to stand against us. And I just, like I said to my sister, because it's painful that I don't have her support in this. Um, this is my story. I'm not telling her story.
Right.
She is in my story because she was part of my story, but I'm not telling her story. And to protect her, I even changed her name and some of the details. So if anybody knows that we're sisters, they shouldn't, she should not be at the impact of what I divulged. But I expect, you started when you started talking to me about the outpouring of when you start doing this work to help others and how many people out there are just waiting for us to be there for them. I expect that there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be critics too.
Yeah.
You know, I'm exposing my parents. Theirs is the only names I didn't change, as well as my own. Everybody else's name I changed. I expect that there are people there that will be triggered and not want to hear about it. But I told you I'm gone from surviving to healing to serving. And that's where I am now. And
Yeah.
I guess if you don't like what I'm putting on the plate, don't eat it.
Yeah. It's so true. I had somebody tell me once that by even just reaching one person, really you're impacting us all. Because so even those that don't want to hear it necessarily, because of that that ripple effect, right? Like if you can impact that one person's life in a beautiful, positive way with your light, then in your story of triumph, wow. I mean, again, that changes the world, really. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I mean, you might have more experience because you've written several books and co-authored and do the audio too. This is my first personal book. I wrote a business book 7 years ago, and the book doesn't get released until June 2025 because the publishing cycle is that far out.
yeah,
And since I been letting people know about it and the work that I'm doing, and I have these speaking engagements, it's just an outpouring of how many people are ready. And though that is our audience, Teri, the
Yes.
people who want to heal. I think you did it perfectly by calling your podcast The Healing Place, because you
Thanks.
like built an environment for it to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard so many of my guests have said that to me of I love the name because it really does encompass all healing, no matter if it's spiritual or physical or mental or whatever way, because it's all part of us.
We're
Like
all
that.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So your book, is it available for pre-order yet?
Not yet. It will be available for pre-order a few months before the release, so that I'm thinking like March or April.
Okay.
But on my website, I have an excerpt. So if people want to get an idea of what the book is about, they can just read it. It's not a problem. Or if they want to hear about when parts of it will be available, more parts of it, because I'll be releasing it a little at a time, they can just subscribe and I'll send them information.
Oh, wonderful. So if they go to your website, they can sign up for like your newsletter or something.
Exactly, right.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Not that people have to sign up, they can read what's on there anyway, but I also have the secret no more cards. So there's a way, there's the checklist of how to tell when you're ready to tell, and there are the secret cards as well as the excerpts. So there's a lot of value there just to check it out.
Yeah, wonderful. Oh, that's so cool. Well, I certainly wanted to leave you with an opportunity to leave people with any final thoughts, or if there's something that you wanted to talk about that we didn't have an opportunity to talk about yet.
Well, I think that the most important thing that we said before is it's never too late. And I mean, I may be a late bloomer, but at least I'm blooming, you know? But I said the other day, joking around, that I was naked in front of the world. And if I was going to get naked in front of the world, I should have done it when I was 20 and my body was better. But I mean, it just took me this long. But I think having a sense of humor is important too. And having understanding, like I do from my parents now, and discovering that when my father was 5 years old, he stood next to his grandmother who was singeing feathers off of a chicken, because that's what they did in those days. They bought a whole chicken and they at the stove burning the feathers off. And somehow she caught on fire and he watched her burn to death.
Oh,
And if you know any 5-year-olds, you got to know that that's going to scar them for life.
yeah,
And while I was angry and I was hurt and I am still healing, it's a journey, not a destination, as you know better than most. That thought alone shifted my whole perspective on how he became who he became. And I asked myself, was he talking to her? Did he feel guilty because he distracted her? I don't know.
yeah,
But I think that survivors in general, we feel guilty for our part because we always want to be better than we are. And we feel shame because we kept it in and we didn't tell anybody. And we're going to feel guilty again when we start telling everybody. So um, be good to yourself, take care of yourself, and it's never too late.
beautiful. Yay, I agree. So how do folks connect with you? Where can they find you?
BabsWalters.com. That's all they need to know.
All right. Yay. That's so cool. Well, it's just been such a joy to have you here. Thank you for, well, yeah, for joining me, for writing your book and having the courage to put your truth out there. It's just a gift. So thank you.
Thank you for being a space for me and other people to show up the way we do for you, Teri. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself.
Good.
Thanks. Bye bye. Hey, everybody. Teri Wellbrock here. Just wanted to thank you again for being a part of this healing space and my hashtag Hope for Healing Journey. Thank you for sharing, liking, inviting others to join, listening in. You've really helped this show blossom. It has now been downloaded in 136 countries and is in the top 2% globally out of 3.2 million shows, which is just amazing. And it's all because of you and your tuning in and inviting others and sharing and liking and loving. And your reviews on Apple really help too. My goal is to hit 100 5-star reviews by the end of the year. And I am closing in on that. So if you are listening in on Apple or Apple Podcasts, please go and rate the show and leave a review if you absolutely love it. And I would be most appreciative. Also, if you would like to receive my monthly Hope for Healing newsletter, please be sure to go to teriwellbrock.com. It's Teri, just one R, WELLBROCK.com. And I have a gift to send you for signing up for that monthly Hope for Healing newsletter. Plus, there are many other resources listed on that page, including a resource library. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.